Hello Zulis, Ross Merrill here, and tonight I want to talk about the Weathery archetype. So at first I was actually mainly interested in the Weathery archetype just because I thought that they had really interesting designs and a really cool theme. But after playtesting them for a while, I'm really amazed by how flexible and how amazingly well the deck can actually perform against like other archetypes. And now I'm quite convinced that compared to some of the other new archetypes we've gotten so far in the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG, it's actually one of the better ones. First of all, compared to the other decks that I've talked about so far, it's definitely better than Crawlers, and compared to Magibullets, like, I'm not sure, maybe I've been using Magibullets wrongly, but right now, I'm quite convinced that Weathery is better than Magibullets as well. But with that said, let's go straight into an overview about the archetype as a whole. So first of all, the Weatherys are a fairy-based archetype. They are mostly level 3s, but they do have one level 6 monster, and their boss monster is the Linktree Link monster Arseal of the Rainbow. And they are mainly an archetype based around continuous spells and traps. So on the spells and traps side, they are basically all continuous, and basically instead of being cards that have effects themselves, based on their position on the field, they will give the Weatherys in front of them and on the left and right, so basically the 3 Weatherys in front of them, a certain effect, and those Weatherys will be able to activate that effect by banishing themselves as a cost. And then all the Weatherys have this like built-in function which special summons them back to the field on the next turn standby phase if they are banished as the cost to activate a Weathery effect. So by doing so, you can actually get a lot of effects off while still maintaining your field presence of Weathery monsters, building up your resources that way, while at the same time, because you're allowed to banish your Weathery monsters as the cost, and as you guys should know, the cost cannot be negated by a card that negates a card effect, you can actually use this to evade a whole bunch of different destructive effects that the opponent can try to use to disrupt your field. Right. So basically, let's first talk about what cards I feel are the most important in the Weathery deck. So breaking it all down into the different 7 weathers we have, Snow and Thunder, they are essentially the best. So essentially on the monster side, we have the Snow Weathery CL, which is a super rare, and when you normal summon this card, you get to activate a Weathery spell or trap from your deck. So great, you get this out on your first turn, and then you just go straight for any of the Weathery spell traps that you need to build up your resources and just go ahead from there. As for Weathery, the Thunder Weathery Termia, he's slightly different in that he requires you to destroy one continuous spell or trap on your field as a cost, but then he'll basically allow you to do the same thing as CL. And this is like a main phase ignition effect, so you can do it like about once every turn. So basically, if you start off when you start off the game in the first turn, you want to have either CL or Termia in your hand. So you normal summon CL if you have CL, and then you get the Snow Weathery pattern onto your field, which is basically, I think it's the most important Weathery pattern in the whole Weathery deck, because it's basically your resource search engine. And if you don't have CL or the Snow Weathery pattern, so long as you have Termia and another continuous spell, you normal summon Termia, you activate that continuous spell, activate Termia's effect, destroy that continuous spell, and then get your Snow Weathery pattern, and then start doing all your banishing and getting more cards into your hand. And so basically that would be it. That is like what I feel would be the recommended first turn play if you're playing a Weathery deck. As for the Thunder Weathery pattern, it's not so important resource based, but I think it's another very important Weathery pattern to like establish on your field as soon as possible. So like I said earlier, I'll definitely want Snow Weathery pattern on the field, and the second Weathery pattern I want to go for is Thunder Weathery pattern, because this is the one that allows you to banish your Weathery monsters at the start of the damage step in order to return an opponent's monster to the hand. So this basically ensures your survivability while sort of preventing your opponent from managing to disrupt your field and build up their resources as well. So with that said, we know now that Thunder and Snow are OP. Let's take a look at a bit of the other cards first, starting off with the other Weathery monster. So another Weathery monster that I think is quite useful is Cloudy Weathery Sleet. Basically, his effect allows you to activate up to 2 Weathery spells or traps from your grave if, while this monster is in your control, another Weathery card that you control is sent to the grave. So why this is interesting is because it can apply to like a variety of situations which you yourself can trigger in the Weathery deck. For example, you could send a Weathery card you control to the grave through tributing, either through the level 6 Polar Weathery Lampla or another tribute monster that I'm going to be introducing to you guys later in the tech cards. And also, let's say the opponent just manages to pull off a Harpy's Feather Duster or basically any strong card that eliminates your whole setup of Weathery spells and traps on the field. And if that happens, you can make use of Sleek's effect in order to quickly recover from the damage and make sure you don't lose too much advantage when situations are starting to look a bit dire. So other than that, there's also a Sun Weathery Bengala, which I don't think is a very notable card. And of all the level 3 Weatheries, I think the worst is actually Rainy Weathery Lazula. Basically, it's for the same reason as why I don't think Sun Weathery Bengala is very amazing in that they allow you to activate a Weathery spell or trap, but it's from your hand, which isn't really like, I don't feel like it really achieves much. Of course, in certain situations it could be very useful, like you just need this clutch spell or trap to be activated at this moment in order to like change the situation, but there isn't, I would say that all the Weathery spells or traps, their effects are like pretty mild, like they are not like entirely game changing, so none of them are really like geared for this kind of like sudden go in and really help you to change the situation sort of thing. So if it's from your hand, your options will probably be quite limited, and I don't think like they are that good in that sense. As for the level 6 Polar Weathery Lampla, I mean, okay, Weathery monsters are banished as cost in order to activate the effects that your patterns give them. So basically, having more Weathery monsters on your field is the best, because no matter like, even though I say like Bengala and Lazuli are like, I don't find them very good, so long as they are on the field, because they are Weathery, they can act as like cost and fodder to activate all of these effects. But this level 6 Polar Weathery Lampla, she requires 1 tribute, so that means you're spending 1 turn instead of getting 1 new piece of resource in order to make all your Weathery plays. Of course you're gonna get like a stronger monster at 2200 attack, but in the end you're not increasing the amount of Weathery pieces you have on the field, and even though she has quite a powerful effect to defend your Weathery spells or traps, at most times I find that that effect is like a bit irrelevant. Yeah, and also, yeah, but basically through my playtesting I didn't find her that useful overall, and like most situations I found that it was the better play to like just summon a random level 3 Weathery instead of summoning her out instead. So that's basically it for the Weathery deck, main deck monsters. Now let's take a look at the Weathery pattern. So just now I talked about how Snowy Weathery pattern and Thunder Weathery pattern are super crucial. Another interesting important one which I think is important is Cloudy Weathery pattern. So basically, Weathery has a bit of like the same flaws as compared to Crawlers and Magibullets in the sense that the monsters in the Weathery deck and archetype are generally low attack power. So even their boss monster Arceal only has like 2400. I mean 2500 would be decent, but 2.4k is a bit meh. Yeah, and so you can potentially be put into a lot of difficult situations when the opponent has a lot of high power attackers. So in that case, this card, the Cloudy Weathery pattern, can actually help you like counter situations. Let's say you have a strong Weathery monster, maybe the level 6 of Arceal, the opponent has a stronger monster and he tries to attack you. You can then use your other Weathery monsters in conjunction with Cloudy Weathery pattern in order to halve their attack. Which I feel that there were many situations in my playtesting where I really wished I had this pattern on the field, but I didn't. So I would say that it is the third most important Weathery pattern beneath Thunder and Snow, which are the most important. As for the other Weathery patterns, they're all kind of mild, a bit situational. I think it's really up to you guys how much you want to put them into the deck, but personally, I mainly want to focus on these 3, and the rest are just sort of, you know, to fill up my spell trap slots. So on a whole, just to give a sort of review for the Weathery archetype, I think that it's a very versatile deck that is able potentially to be able to put up a good fight against virtually any other deck. But in order to be able to play the Weathery deck archetype, you really need to have some foresight. You need to practice in order to be able to like predict your opponent's moves better, in order to figure out where exactly you want to position your spells and traps. Because remember, you can only have 1 of each Weathery pattern on the field, and they are only going to affect the 3 monsters in front of it. The basic playstyle for Weatheries would be, like I said earlier, you must prevent opponent from messing up your field using stuff like Thunder Weathery Pattern in order to send his monsters back to the hand, while building up a good amount of resources through cards such as Snowy Weathery Pattern. So you basically need like to sort of mix up your plays here and there. Use your effects in order to make your monsters evade destruction so that they are effectively always there on your field. Like they will always return basically, so that you have those resources. While at the same time prevent your opponent from accumulating stuff. If they are not gonna attack you, attack them, use Thundery Weathery Pattern to send his resources back to the hand, make him waste his normal summons every turn, and basically stuff like that. But basically the main difficulty that I faced with the Weathery deck is that basically the Weathery archetype isn't naturally geared to deal with swarming. So even though you have like the perfect Weathery setup, the ideal case for every Weathery is that it deals with opponents one-on-one. So if you have two Weathery monsters, of course it's best if the opponent only has one monster, but I feel like two Weathery monsters can deal with up to 2 monsters on the opponent's field, maybe 3 if their field is not that intense. But I mean, if the opponent like uses Pendulum decks for example and manages to basically swarm his field, get a bunch of strong monsters on the field at once, like 5 monsters, just fill up his field, and because your Weathery monsters are so low on attack, no matter how good your Weathery pattern setup is, they're just gonna get trampled eventually, yeah. And of course you can say that they'll come back the next turn, but you don't even know if you're going to survive the turn because the opponent just needs to like get by whatever Weatheries you have, and then everything else is just going to be a direct attack. So I feel that's the main weakness, being unable to deal with swarms, and also like sort of mass removal. Like if the opponent just gets rid of all your patterns or like uses effects to like blast all your monsters at once, it's gonna get pretty risky. But of course, just remember that if you play your cards right, there is always the potential for evasion. But if the situation starts going wrong, just one blast of mass removal is gonna wreck your field pretty badly. Now, I want to spend a bit of time to talk about the Link boss, Rainbow Arceal. Personally, I feel that Arceal is an incredibly powerful card. It has such great effects. It basically just turns your entire Weathery deck into like a negation archetype. But the main problem I feel is that for even with all the effects it has, for 2400 attack, I think Link Tree is really way too expensive because Weatheries don't really have a means of swarming, you know. Yeah, they don't really have effects that special summon each other, so that is why you have to slowly build up your field. So it's quite a bad idea I find that it's a very bad idea to, once you have 3 Weathery monsters on your field, go into Arceal immediately. I would definitely recommend watching the timing to Link summon Arceal. Like, get 5 Weathery monsters on your field if able, and then Link summon 3 in Arceal. Make sure the arrows are pointing down to your other Weatheries, and then you'll have a really solid field. But yeah, Link, the cost to having to sacrifice 3 Weathery monsters just to get out Arceal is still a bit like expensive for me, so it becomes very important to watch the timing for when you actually do it. Also, Arceal's main effect is to like basically negate a special summon by tributing itself, so you might think that okay, maybe after using that effect with Arceal I can revive it from the grave with Monster Reborn or something like that, but Arceal loses the special summon negation effect because the condition is that this monster must be Link summoned in order to use that effect. Also, when you special summon it from the grave, it'll be in the main monster zone, it can't use its 3 backward arrows to power up your Weathery monster. So basically, an Arceal revive from the grave is basically, I would say, I really call it a dead card. So that is generally all I have to say about the Weathery archetype as a whole. Now I'm just gonna give you guys a glimpse of the deck I'm using so far. So I've tried to input some tech cards in order to try and get past the flaws that I mentioned just now, such as the weakness to swarm, the weakness to like pendulum swarming, the weakness to mass removal. So I call this the Shooting Star Weathery build. So basically, of course, first going through the Super Tech monster Metatron 12, the true Dracom Baton. This card is like, it was like made to be used together with Weatheries. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the Weathery continuous spells and traps aren't like that amazing, they are pretty mild, so you just need a Snow and Thunder actually, and then you can just use the rest as fodder in order to tribute summon this guy, which is gonna be immune to spells and traps and monsters potentially, and when it's destroyed, I have placed like some Shooting Star Dragons in the in the extra deck in order to just pull them out. I mean, I think there's definitely better choices other than Shooting Star, but I love Stardust and Shooting Star Dragon too much, so it's like, just put it together. I mean, it sort of goes with the whole weather, right? You know, weather, 7 weathers and Shooting Star and Stardust. But yeah, Dragon Baton, a really good card to put into this set. Magic Planter, I mean, might as well, right? Because other than this card and the Thunder Weathery pattern, I'm pumping a lot of other like traps into this deck. So it's good to like just get those extra draws. Anti-Spell Fragrance, great for shutting down those opponent Pendulum decks. And also if it's starting to affect you a bit, you can always destroy it with Thunder Weathery pattern. But in most cases, because your Weathery monsters and effects allow you to activate spells and traps from the deck, it shouldn't be too much of a problem for yourself. Valhalla Hall of the Fallen, trying to fix the problems of Weatheries being unable to swarm. After pulling a lot of resources into your hand, try to use this card in order to be able to rack up your resources even faster when your field is empty. Starlight Road, yeah. In my playtesting, I have to say that Starlight Road has been one of the most MVP cards of this deck, because the easiest way to deal with a really annoying Weathery setup is to just try and wreck the whole field. So when the opponent goes for that, you just go for the Starlight Road and they're like, GG. Especially if they special summon an extremely powerful monster that has a destruction effect. And then you can just use this to get by it, negate it, destroy it, and then you have a Stardust on your field. And your opponent would have just wasted their time, and your Weatheries with small attack power will still be quite safe. Of course, Rivalry of Warlords, because, I mean, fully fairy deck, and Mirror Force and Gravity Bind, which I feel are good ways in order to try and deal with opponents that like to swarm a lot. Especially trying to deal with the whole fact that Weatheries aren't very good against like actual battling with their low stats. So looking at the extra deck, of course, you're gonna have Arceal, 3 copies. Put some Gaia Saber, the Virtual Knight, just in case the opponent decides to give you some like extra monster fodder for whatever reason. You can just get rid of it, get a pretty solid vanilla attacker. Shooting Star Dragon and Stardust Dragon, of course, so they decided to put 2 of each. And for the rank 3 Xyz plays, because this is a mainly level 3 deck, I've decided to put Chronomaly, Crystal Chrononaut, and Wind Up Zenmaines. Mainly because these 2 cards are quite useful utility-wise for survivability. So just in case you feel that if the opponent swarms fully and you don't really have anything in your hand that can sort of save you, but you have 2 Weatheries, instead of like making use of their banishing effects, you can maybe just pull out a Chronomaly Crystal Chrononaut and try to use that to like sort of tide the turnover. Cause who knows, that might just buy you the time you need in order to draw an epic card in order to turn the tables around. Right, so with that, I guess that'll be all for this Weathery deck profile and discussion video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and do let me know what you think about this crazy Shooting Star random deck profile I've come up with, and any suggestions on what other cards I should put into this deck in order to make my Weatheries even more solid than before. So actually, after this playtesting, I'm thinking that Weatheries might actually become my main archetype instead of Crawlers in this Link era. But of course, that will still depend on whether we get any new support for Crawlers after in the future. Weathery, I'm quite sure we are not gonna get new support for a very long time at least, because we've already got the 7 colors of the rainbow. But Crawlers, because they play a role in the Stargrail storyline, who knows? Maybe in the next booster or the next booster, they might get new cards which will make them even more competitively viable. So yeah, I guess that'll be all for this video. Hope to see you guys in the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Video. Let's access the spinning, swirling data storm, and with the wind our hearts are made to the speed